a state terrorism. What can be understood on a political level that France did nothing to the time. The French government was also deeply bothering to act, and hence the terrorist actions of the Gauls were mainly produced in France. You have a very powerful terrorist group there. There are people who fight it in all possible ways, including resorting to dirty war, and, therefore, you will also live closely what the terrorist attacks are in your territory. Has a cons regulation been tuned? The problem of the Gulf, as they were, that is, with thugs, was that they did anything. The anti-terrorism struggle was advancing and advancing. Thanks to the Franco-Spanish collaboration. Moreover, if that collaboration would not have been the one that was, surely today we would not be talking about ETA as something of the past, but would still be alive. We have to make a decision on how to respond to the French government. From Socoa, they no longer consider us a mere Spanish internal matter. No, no. From Socoa, no. The first importance of importance in France was that of Sochinoa in '86. It was a high-risk operation as well. Do you know you are looking for missiles? Earth-air missiles. Because they had already spoken, through some command, of the possibility that we looked for the road through a French mafia group that sold the missiles to ETA. So we had contacts with the CIA. The Americans took the missiles to their base they had in Germany, in NATO, and the detectors were mounted there. It was a kind of GPS then. And those beacon missiles will take me to the deposits of weapons and explosives. It took a lot, and it seemed that that was going to end. Until one day, one of the vehicles in the southern area of France, aligning with the Spanish border, gave the signal of the device. The signal issued by the sender led us to a furniture factory in Hendaya, which is right next to the Vilasua River, which is the river that divides Spain and France. At that time, it was that, Socoa, a very bad company at the time. That is, they were almost all you will. We begin contacts with the French authorities to allow us to enter. In this factory, there was no large deposit of explosives, but there was a lot of documentation and, above all, it was the first time we went into the informative heart of the ETA terrorist group. And that was, in addition, there the documentation of ETA finance, with the collection of the revolutionary tax, the different kidnappings that there were, payments to the commands. ETA finance are very, very archaic and very handmade. What were they based on? Very easy. In the pure and economic extortion of the Basque business. Above all, it was the revolutionary tax, of course. That is to say, that the organization sent a letter to someone, in general, to an important entrepreneur, to say, well, to help the movement, you have to pay such millions of pesetas, and for that you get in touch with the usual people. I also include extortion under kidnapping. It is a very important source of financing. It is a way of extorting too. What happens is that instead of doing it by means of a letter, you do it with the person kidnapped in Azulo. We are talking about global financing that could exceed 110 million euros. They were kidnapped in very bad conditions. The concealment mechanisms have been very varied, from the least worked, which was a hole in the mountain where you have the kidnapped, for a while, to the most sophisticated engineering works in buildings where the opening was a very well camouflaged hydraulic opening, as was the case of Ortega Lara. Ortega Lara kidnapping is not an economic kidnapping. Ortega Lara was a prison officer, normal, anonymous, without any relevance, who worked in a Burgos prison. In exchange for liberation, ETA requested an impossible, as it was, release prisoners, etc., etc., etc. It was blackmail that the state, of course, could not accept. It was July 1997. It had 500 and peak of kidnapping days. Of the kidnapping of Galara. The investigation was very difficult. First, because at the time of the kidnapping, ETA did not leave any loose ends, but, as it was already frequent, the solution to the problems of ETA were in France. When we stopped Pototo in the jungle, we found, among other things, we find a piece of paper with one appointment, with one bowl. 3 letters, bowl. We went crazy trying to know what could correspond to bowl. Crossing countless data, countless people working, we conclude that one Bolinaga, a supporter of ETA, Bolinaga, could correspond to each other. Bolinaga was one of Ortega's kidnappers. The only good clue that there took some people in Mondragon. We located a ship that didn't use it to work hard, but where each and every day entered one of the members of the command with a bread bar, and thus came out the bread bar. Then when we entered the registry, they said that the bread was for the dog. When we already locate the Zulo and 2 civil guards enter to take Ortega at the time of the hole, the face that emerges, the one we see, that we are there, it looked like anything. What appears from the hole is a shipwrecked with the beard of many months, with the lost look, totally gone. It was the reflection of a 500 and peak torture days in a knife of 2 by 1, without light, without ventilation. To 3 days of his release, I received a call from the Ministry of Interior and invited me to visit the industrial pavilion in Mondragon and go down to Zulo. It was very, very distressing and terribly more shocking to observe the kitchen in which the Ciaras drew, ate, knowing that they had a man downhill. Physically, it hit me until vomiting.
Luego, cuando entramos en el registro, dijeron que es que el pan era para el perro.
It is sub-function. It had 3 branches. The political branch, which were the ones who marked the political strategy, also those who told who had to kill. A second branch, which was the military branch, that is, the murderers, pure and hard, murderers. And then there was the branch, say, logistics, those that facilitated the murderers, everything that needed them so they could kill. And the bosses, the most qualified, formed the ETA Management Committee, where, periodically, they met and established where to go or where to not go. There is another option, a demonstration of force to Paris. The only thing they understand, a quincha, a host in the snout. The rest, smoke. Negotiations, conversations, nothing. A quincha in France would be shot in our heads, and Paralde is our sanctuary. If we face the French government, it ends. There has always been a kind of legend about that old man who walked through the Gran Via de Bilbao, and that was really the infernal mind that was behind the entire ideation of ETA. Normally, the head of the military apparatus is the head of ETA. Not all the time, but almost all the time. Normal because they have weapons. He who has weapons is boss. But normally, it was a collegiate body where everyone had voice and everyone had a vote. Who leaned to respond to France with a quincha? And against? ETA tries to act against France, and, in fact, there is a campaign against French interests in Spain. That is, they machine-gunned French trucks, they acted against supermarkets and French capital companies in Spain, and tries, in some way, to press France so that France does not collaborate openly, because she knows that collaboration could lead her to the end of her days. Several times I was going to think or try in France. There were people who wanted to do something, thinking that doing something the movement will take a little strength, and so on. And other people who said, but if we threaten in France, they will give us and finish us. Are we going to allow that attack to commit? Are we not going to do anything to prevent it? They are going to sound hard, but an attack in Paris will force the French government to act against ETA in a much firmer way. My colonel, our duty is obey, Captain. We would have immediately communicated to the French, and we had displaced a unit to Paris to collaborate in situ with the French in the search for the command. Because I believe that it was more profitable to sign up for the same telling France, see how I help you, that I just avoided a tragedy in France, a personal tragedy and a political tragedy. I hope that if he had intended to do something, an attack in Paris, I hope that the Spanish government would have told us that. But personally, I think not. That is political, my policy. Now it comes out. Judge Leblanc. She is a very progressive woman with a very peculiar phobia to terrorist groups. 16 seconds. At some point, ETA thought that his #1 public enemy was a judge, a unique anti-terrorism magistrate who was a judge. We had found, indeed, in the management roles, an attempt at the attack against Judge Laurence Levert, the very hard instruction judge. I worked a lot. They had what we call prepared information to make an attack. The plan to kill him had called him skeleton. You can think that it is because they have uploaded it. It is very thin. They did not dare to step. Despite having made plans, despite having been physically following the judge between his home and his workplace, they did not dare. A part of ETA thought it would be a suicide attentive in France. There have always been some more daring than others, more December than others. The branch, say, more cautious thought that if ETA killed in France a figure as emblematic as a judge, the entire weight of the French state would fall on top of it. I have no doubt that if they had put a car bomb in Paris with half a dozen victims, nothing more, the reaction would have been judgment by the French government. With which, when they put on the balance whether to kill or not the judge, the balance leaned towards him. It could also have been inclined towards yes, because ETA was already at an increasing point of madness. Luerta has told me that the organization cannot know anything we are going to do, that we cannot count on its arsenals or its counterfeiters or with anything. The only thing that hasn't told me is what we are going to do. Put a bomb in Paris. Hardly an entire command disobey orders. ETA, if he endured 50 years, is because within its internal functioning, internal discipline was a constant that followed Rajataba. In my time, the one who was not satisfied grabbed and left. Then the persecution of the dissident begins. ETA arrived in recent years to be a modus vivendi. People who could not leave the organization. It was a killing machine impossible to stop.
ETA pensaba que sería un suicidio atentar en Francia.
Siempre ha habido unos más,
The dissent in ETA was severely punished.
más de
She was
cerebrosos que
punished
otros,
with
y la
death,
rama,
with murder.
digamos, más cautelosa pensó que si ETA mataba en Francia una figura tan emblemática como una
Distert,
juez,
who is from San Sebastian, was a person with intellectual formation who is aware that democracy and that, instead of opposing, what you have to do is see in a democracy how the world of this island is adapted and that a political party had to be created. The organization has ordered me.
con lo cual,
Let's
cuando
release
se
him.
puso
They
sobre
have
la
paid
balanza,
half. Nor of Konya.
si matar
They have fried
o
one
no
of
hacer,
mine. Are you going to
la
release
balanza
him
se
because he
inclinó
has
no.
paid half?
Voy a abrir
What the
ETA,
organization
sí,
rules is done.
porque ETA
You can
ya
see
estaba en un
that you
punto
come from the
cada vez
Polymilis.
mayor.
The Polymilis were precisely those who had an intellectual patina, a rationalization, and that they concluded that there was nowhere. Right? And they dissolved.
Un comando
But
entero
Dister goes further.
desobedecía órdenes.
Not only is a
ETA
political
seguía
party
cuando
created to
50
participate in
años
formal or bourgeois democracy,
dentro de su funcionamiento interno,
but also that
la
party will be the
disciplina interna
avant-garde of the
era
movement
una
and the
constante
ETA, military,
fidelización a las
realize.
En mi época, el que no estaba conforme agarraba y se iba. Luego ya
An
empieza la
atrocious campaign
persecución
are
del
made to demonstrate that they are the authentic ETA and are the ones that continue to represent all the authentic claims of the Basque people. They didn't want a foreign political leadership that participated in the political process. And Aspertu was determined to enhance it, hence his disappearance.
Pertur, que es de San Sebastián, era
Joyes,
una persona
being someone from the
con
executive committee,
intelectual, que
wanted to leave the
consciente de
militancy.
la democracia, y que en vez de
ETA
oponerse,
allowed him to leave
hacer
militancy, but under his conditions, and his conditions did not go back to his town to lead a normal life.
un partido político.
He leaves to Mexico, and in Mexico, nothing happens to him. But a race ends, he decides to return, make normal life, and say, "No, you have been head of the milis. We execute you." And they kill her in front of her little son. I was threatened for 17 years. I had a pair of more serious notices by the police. Take care, because it seems that there are glimpses, or there are suspicions that they have approached. And so I spent more than 15 years, like escorts. The usual have a blind faith in Algiers conversations. They do not realize that it is a trap of the Spanish government. They want to do the same thing they did with the Polymilis, enter the weapons in exchange for 4 ballot. Well, you also have to work the way of political contacts, covered. For example, Algiers conversations. Why are Algiers conversations? They occur because the insistence of the French was that we had to negotiate with this, that this was solved by means of negotiation and that it had to be done. There were several meetings. I attended the 2 most important. On the other, the table was the Madrid command. They told me they were careful because when they return to Madrid, they can kill him. I said, look, that is included in the payroll.
Y en México no le pasa nada, pero acaba una carrera, decide volver a hacer la vida normal y dicen, no, tú has sido jefa de los milis, te ajusticiamos. Y la matan delante de su...
In a negotiation, each contributes their arguments, their reasons, and their strength. ETA could only contribute one thing, dead. And while we are negotiating, I'm going to kill a lot. You see what my strength is. You see? Because I just showed you that yesterday I killed 4 children in Zaragoza. The dead for Basque nationalism have been of a clamorous utility. That is, and that violence is useless lie, is something that disgusts, but that violence in politics has very large revenues, and, to a large extent, you have to accept it. That ended as we thought he was going to end. The important thing was to bend to the state and get stronger from the negotiation than as it had entered. When ETA accepted or asked for negotiations, I think I did not expect anything at the level of agreements.
dijeron, tenga usted cuidado porque cuando vuelva usted a Madrid le pueden asesinar.
They have never taken so many commands of command and material border that during the year of Angels discussions. Never. Most ETA does not believe in negotiation and get a negotiated purpose. Because? Yes, because the armed struggle had become an end in itself.
En una negociación, cada uno aporta sus argumentos, sus razones y su fuerza. ETA solo podía aportar una cosa.
This tries, through the car bomb, survive. This, as a terrorist group, obviously needs explosive weapons. Throughout their history, they went through all phases. To buy on the black market, to buy other terrorist groups. And it wouldn't be disposable that ETA resorted at some point of urgency to rush.
La violencia en política tiene réditos muy grandes y en gran medida hay que aceptarlo.
To buy weapons from the criminal groups that could operate in France.
Lo importante era doblegar al Estado y salir más fuerte de la negociación.
To a kilo of dynamite and a detonator, it bends the liaison. But there is a certain history of ETA's relationship with the Marsellasa mafia. This man, in the year 84, a steel entrepreneur, said clearly and in public that if he, his family, his companies, something happened, an attack of ETA, of any characteristic, behind many ETA RAS. And he suggested that he already had his contacts with the Marsellesa mafia to take revenge in the event that ETA acts against their interests. He spoke very seriously. And the Etares took it very seriously. Nothing never happened. The key to dismantling an organization of that potential was on French soil. There was something in France that was irreplaceable and that for ETA was vital, that they were his arsenals of explosive weapons. Sanctuary Operation. We called the Sanctuary Operation because we knew it was the end of the sanctuary, the real end of the ETA sanctuary. It was the operation, yes, almost decisive against ETA. We orient the investigations to go to the logistics apparatus, because the logistics apparatus cannot move. The military apparatus, people leave, come. We guide it well. We take, I think, a couple of years to join piece by piece, puzzle by puzzle. We stop all southern ETA. All. The big ones and the group of little ones. If one looks at the amounts of weapons and explosives seized, we talked about thousands of kilos, thousands of weapons. After that, ETA was nothing. ETA calls the governments of Spain and France to open a direct dialogue process that aims to resolve the consequences of the conflict and thus overcome armed confrontation. For all this, ETA has decided the definitive cessation of its armed activity.
Euskal Herria eskatuta, Euskal Herria sozialista, JK independentzia eta sozialismoa lortu arte.